Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the CFR training webinar for the 2024-25 fiscal year consolidated fiscal report. Today, we have approximately 650 attendees joining the webinar. So hopefully we don't have any issues with the WebEx. Both of the webinar sessions will be recorded and posted on YouTube. So if you have a colleague that could not make it or you want to listen to training again, you will be able to. We will send an email out to all providers notifying them of when they are available and where they can be found. My name is Alpa Amin, a representative from OPWDD, and I will be the host for the two webinars we have scheduled this week. Today's NY state representative will be as follows. Representing OSS, Paul Green, Paul Sutton, Lisa Vickery. Representing OMH, Michelle Zelinsky, Josh Becker, and Hoffman. Representing OPWDD, Francis Vasilio, Kenneth Glinmeyer, Alpa Amin, Emily Seward. Representing SED, Catherine Cochran, Evelyn Turnbull, Ian Hopp. Representing DOH, Jeffrey Nicholson, Nicole Miliusi, Nicole Gerber. Also, we have a survey that will pop up at the end of the event. We would greatly appreciate you taking the time to fill out the survey so that we can continue to make this training better each time. Session 1 will cover getting started, CFRS Web, core reporting CFR 1 through DMH 1. Question and answer. Hopefully, you have had the opportunity to check out previous Q&As that have been posted on the OMH website listed on the screen. We strongly encourage all attendees to ask questions through the Q&A function in the webinar. It is on your right-hand side of your screen, and you might have to click the arrow next to the Q&A to open up the dialog box. If you don't see it, click the three dots at the bottom right of the WebEx and then click Q&A. We will not be answering questions today, but plan on answering all the questions and posting answer online along with a recording of this webinar so that everyone can get the benefit of this webinar and questions asked. CFR contact information. This is always good to know when you have questions. This slide shows how to contact each agency. Most of us are still working hybrid schedule, so all the agencies prefer email contact. Any questions related to claim can go to the contact listed on this slide. As noted on the previous slide, email would be the preferred method. By end of this seminar, we hope to accomplish the following goals. Introduce provider to the CFR manual and CFRS Web. Provide NYS agency contact information for specific questions not covered during this training session. Help providers become familiar with the CFR core reports. Discuss important policies, principles, and rules regarding completion of the CFR. I will now pass on the presenting to our first panelist.
Thank you, Alpa. This is Paul Sutton from Oasis, and I'll be going over the getting started. The CFR manual contains 9 general overview sections with a section for each of the core, claiming, and supplemental schedules, as well as numerous appendices containing detailed information. You should read and review these 9 sections before beginning work on the CFR to familiarize yourself with them. They are available for download at the SED website at the below link. Now, this is a screenshot of what you'll see when you click on that link. As you can see, the current manual for the 24-25 period has been posted there. You can download both the manual and appendices. as well as the transmittal letter. The transmittal letter includes all the recent changes that are new to the manual from last year. The CFR is used as a year-end cost report that documents service provider expenses and revenues on one consolidated report and is shared by the 5 New York State agencies. This cost report information is used for rate and fee setting, cost of living increases, and fiscal analysis. The cost report is also referred to as the CFR core schedules and consists of the CFR 1 through 6 and the DMH 1. The CFR also includes a year-end claiming document that is the basis of payment of your final claim for the period. These claiming schedules are the DMH 2 and 3 schedules. Full accrual accounting must be used when reporting fiscal information on the CFR 1 through 6 and DMH 1 core schedules. The DMH 2 and 3 claiming schedules may be completed on accrual, modified accrual, or cash basis of accounting. Filers of many abbreviated CFRs may complete all the required schedules on accrual, modified accrual, or the cash basis of accounting. Now, the goal of accrual accounting is to account in the periods in which they occur, the effect of transactions and other events and circumstances to the extent that those financial events effects are recognizable and measurable. This means your revenue is recorded and recognized when earned, regardless of when you receive payment. And also your expenses are recognized and recorded as they are incurred, not when they are paid. Your units of service are counted when provided, and salary expenses are reported in the period incurred, not in the period the paycheck was issued. There are 4 types of CFR submissions: full, abbreviated, Article 28 abbreviated, and mini abbreviated. The type of CFR the provider must complete depends on the type of programs operated and the amount and type of funding received from the CFR state agencies. You should review the submission matrices in Section 2 of the CFR manual to determine the type of CFR submission required. And when a service provider is funded by more than one New York State agency, the most stringent reporting requirements apply for all required filings. This means that if you operate programs for OMH and OPWDD, and based on your OMH programs, you would need to file a mini abbreviated CFR, but your OPWDD requirements would entail that you file a full CFR. That means you would then need to file a combined full CFR. This is a screenshot of one of the matrices in Section 2 we just discussed. And Section 2 contains 5 matrices for determining the correct CFR submission type for each agency. And you should select the applicable matrix and answer a series of yes or no questions to determine the correct submission type. For the purposes of determining submission requirements, Medicaid managed care is considered to be Medicaid. And Section 2 also contains notes relating to New York State agency-specific reporting requirements and exceptions. These matrices change often, and you should review them yearly. CFR reporting periods are generally based on the geographic location of a service provider's corporate headquarters. This training covers the July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2025 fiscal year reporting period. All programs operated during this time period should be reported on your CFR. If your agency has a contract for one or more programs funded in a period different than your agency's standard CFR reporting period, an additional mini abbreviated CFR may be required for the non-standard filing period. The additional CFR will use the reporting period specified by the contract. The most common off-cycle contracts are for special legislative grants or member items. For example, if a provider has its corporate headquarters in Manhattan and operates programs in both Manhattan and Westchester County, must submit their primary CFR in the standard reporting period of July 1st through June 30th. This provider would complete the CFR detailing expenses and revenues for all programs in operation during that time period, including the Westchester County programs. Further, they must also submit a secondary mini-abbreviated CFR on the January 1st through December 31st reporting period for the programs funded by Westchester County only. You should refer to Section 3 of the CFR manual for additional requirements. Due dates. The due dates for your CFR are as follows. For OMH and SED filers, your CFR is due on November 1st. For OASIS, OPWDD, and DOH filers, your CFR will be due on December 1st. Now, please note that if the due date falls on a weekend or a holiday, the deadline is not extended until the next business day. As an example, this year, November 1st will fall on a Saturday. Therefore, the deadline, if your CFR is due on November 1st, as in the case of OMH and SED here, the deadline is not extended until the following Monday. Your deadline is still November 1st. To ensure compliance in submitting accurate CFRs and the required supporting documents, each New York State agency can impose sanctions and penalties on the provider. The imposition of sanctions and penalties may include, but not limited to, withholding of advance payments, suspension or revocation of your operating certificate, or notification of noncompliance to DOH for Medicaid providers. Each state agency has their own penalties, which vary, so we will not discuss them here, but they will be discussed later in the agency-specific changes. Now, if your agency is funded through an LGU contract, check with the county in New York City for their specific requirements regarding the CFR and final claim submissions. The LGU may require a submission due date earlier than the New York State agency prescribed due date. New York State agency CFR requirements are the minimal requirement standards regarding CFR submissions. The LGU requirements can be stricter, but cannot be more lenient. And sending copies of your certification schedules or any other documents to the county or your local DDRO does not fulfill your requirement with the state agencies. CFRs are prepared and submitted using CFRS Web, which is found at the following link. In addition to the submission of the CFR, the agency financial statements and parent agency allocation supporting documentation should be submitted through CFRS Web. Instructions of the submission of certification schedules through CFR Web will be discussed later in the presentation. Now, please do not mail paper copies of your CFR core schedules to the New York State Agency CFR units in Albany. You know, most of us are paperless now, so just submitting them electronically through CFRS Web is more than enough. Save yourself the time and the postage. Important to remember is that CFRS Web, especially, this is new for this year, so pay attention. The CFRS Web must now be used for the electronic signing of certification schedules, beginning with the implementation of version 45 of the CFR Web software, which you will use for the creation of your 24-25 CFR. New York State agencies will no longer accept any other form of certification submission if the certification can be electronically signed. Now, the details of how this works will be discussed, later in the presentation, so stay tuned. When a revised CFR is submitted, a provider is required to electronically sign, where applicable, revised certification schedules complete with a new DCN. For OASIS, a new CFR IIA compliance review, CFR III, and CFR IV are required. But subsequent to a new IIA or compliance review being received from your accountant, OASIS will accept an attestation for minor changes. SED and OPWDD require new CFR and IIA. OMH and DOH require a new CFR only. For OPWDD, a new certified CFR and IIA is required. Only CPA certified CFRs will be utilized for a calculation of OPWDD reimbursement levels or any other initiative that utilizes a CFR for calculation of funding or reimbursement. Providers may submit revised CFRs or certifications in CFR Web that have not been certified in compliance with other agencies' requirements. However, OPWDD CFR unit will not accept these without certification. Now, if e-signing is not yet available for a specific certification schedule, a hand-signed copy of the certification schedule will still need to be submitted. Consolidated financial statements, including all affiliates, must be submitted electronically as PDF files through CFRS Web. In addition, financial statements reflecting information on the provider as a standalone entity should be uploaded if available. And providers that are required to have a single audit based on the Uniform Guidance supplement must upload a copy of the audit report to the funding agency via CFR Web. Now, financial statements should only be uploaded one time for a fiscal reporting period, unless there are changes. This means if you submit your CFR and your financial statements, but we later request a revision, once you submit your revised CFR, you do not need to submit your financial statements again. And please do not upload draft financial statements. You know, we get that sometimes where a provider will try to meet the deadline and send in your draft financials, and that we can't use those. The financial statements are only required or are not required for many abbreviated CFRs. Prior period financial statements can also be uploaded through CFR Web. It is preferred that your CPA audited financials correspond to the CFR reporting period. However, if your agency's corporate fiscal year is different than the CFR reporting period, please submit financial statements with an end of cycle date that falls within the reporting period. And we recommend that your audited financial statements include prior year's data in the presentations of the balance sheet and income statement, for comparison's sake. Some record-keeping tips. Program payroll and fringe benefits should be reconciled to your general ledger on a monthly or quarterly basis. Salary allocations between different programs or job functions should be carefully monitored. Expenses and revenues should be monitored on a regular basis and compared against your budgets. Internal financial reporting systems should be structured to capture the cost categories that are included on the CFR. And units of service provided by the program should be tracked on a regular basis. And program descriptions and units of service definitions can be found in the appendices E, F, G, H, and HH. And a list of some but not all non-allowable costs can be found in Appendix X. Now, non-allowable costs. A cost must be reasonable and/or necessary for providing services in both its nature and amount. In determining the reasonableness of a given cost, consideration will be given to whether costs incurred in rendering the service are generally recognized as ordinary and necessary. Providers operating DMH programs should refer to Appendix X of the CFR manual for a list of some but not all non-allowable costs. All non-allowable costs included as an expense on any line of the CFR core schedules must be reported in the adjustments non-allowable cost line of those schedules. Following are some examples of non-allowable costs that must be adjusted out. Costs that are not properly related to patient care and principally afford diversion, amusement, or entertainment to owners, operators, or employees. Costs related to the purchase of alcoholic beverages. Violations or failure to comply with federal, state, and local laws, rules, and regulations. And training costs afforded to staff that does not directly relate to fulfillment of their required duties. Now, related party transactions. The allowable cost of a related party transaction is the lower of the related organization's or individual's actual cost or the fair market value of those goods or services. All related party transactions, as well as entity-wide agency administration, must be disclosed in detail in your CFR 5 schedule. All excess related party transaction costs included as an expense on any line of a CFR schedule must be reported on the adjustments non-allowable costs as well. Fringe benefits. Fringe benefit expenses that are not reasonable and available to all employees are non-allowable and must be adjusted out of the reported costs in the applicable CFR schedule. Non-allowable fringe benefits include supplemental executive retirement plans or any non-qualified deferred compensation plan, Now, CFRS Web is a common platform for the providers of the 5 New York State agencies that are required to submit CFRs and CBRs. All New York State agencies and their programs are to be reported on one consolidated CFR. CFR Web requires entry of agency information and program site information. Only program codes and funding source codes valid for the reporting period can be used. Most questions you have regarding CFR Web can be answered by reviewing the CFRS web page located at the following link or using the Web User Guide located in the CFR Web menu from the home page under the Help section. After reviewing these documents, if additional assistance accessing or navigating CFR Web is required, we recommend you first contact your CFR agency representatives. Each agency's CFR unit can be emailed from the below links. If technical assistance is required, such as the CFRS web application is not responding, then contact the help desk. You can either use the following phone number or email the help desk at healthhelp@its.ny.gov. Now, your security manager. The security manager provides user access to CFRS Web and must be authorized by the service providers. The security manager at your agency assigns a CFRS Web role to fiscal staff involved in reviewing, preparing, or submitting CFRs. The assigned user role can be viewed by clicking on the username on the upper right of your screen. A different set of permissions is associated with each role. If a different level of access is needed, the user should contact your agency's security manager. And each agency is encouraged to establish more than one security manager, if needed. Now, what roles can you have in CFRS Web? The possible user roles are as follows. The standard roles are reviewer, preparer, and submitter. A reviewer reviews all documents within CFRS Web, including those not yet submitted. They do not have the ability to create or complete documents, they cannot revise documents, and they cannot submit documents. They can only view them. Now, a preparer creates and completes new documents. They review and revise all documents within the application, including those not yet submitted. They can do everything except submit the final product. Now, your submitter can do everything. They can create and complete new documents. They can review and revise all existing documents, including those that have not yet been submitted. And they may submit the CFRs and all supporting documents in CFRS Web. Now, these are graduating in ability. So if you assign roles to somebody, you do not need to assign them as all three roles. The submitter can review, prepare, and submit. They can do all three. And you can have the same role assigned to multiple users. So for example, you can assign 2 or 3 submitters for your agency, which you may find helpful, in case, the filing deadline's coming up, your primary user is, is out sick, or they're on vacation, or maybe they recently left the agency or retired. That way you still have other staff with access to CFR Web with the appropriate permissions to still access the documents you need to. Now, there is also a CPA or a fiscal role to access CFR Web. Now, sometimes your accountant may prepare the CFR for more than one provider. The way this works, if a user is being created as a CPA or fiscal user, and they already have access to CFR Web for under a different provider, what you would need to do is reach out to your local CFR unit, and send them the following information. Provide them the name of the user, for your accountant that needs the extra access. Give them their primary ID that they already use to log into CFR Web with. Provide us with your agency code and tell us what role you want your CPA to have. Do you need to have him add as a preparer for you, or should he be a submitter, or maybe you only want him to have reviewer access? But if they already have access to CFR Web, with a different provider, you will not be able to add them yourself. So you need to email us the following information. Now, in addition to the user roles already discussed, we will now be implementing the following new signatory roles, to go with the new e-sign feature. Now, e-sign roles are maintained by the service provider security manager. For maintenance or modifications of the signatory roles, contact your security manager, and they will be able to add or update these. And the following list is the new signatory roles in which level of access they're provided with. There's a new executive director e-sign role, which specifically allows your executive director access to have the ability to sign the CFRI, III, and IV schedules. There will be a county director role, which allows the county director to sign the CFR III, and there will be an extra CPA e-sign role, which allows your accountant to log in and sign the II schedule. Again, you will no longer need to print out and hand sign your certification schedules. You'll now have a special role to log into CFR Web with and view and view the documents and sign them, right there. And we'll explain all this, how this process works in a little while, so stay tuned. And that is the end of my section, and I will now pass this off to the next presenter.
Good morning. My name is Francis Vaselio. I work in the CFR unit at OPWDD. Once you've accessed CFRS Web, at the top of the screen, you'll see the announcement board. We post things here that are of general interest to everyone. For instance, when the programming has been modified to allow for the creation of a 2425 CFR, there'll be a posting on the announcement board. So you no longer need to reach out to us to ask when you can start your new CFR. You can log in and take a look, and if it's available, there'll be an announcement there for it. Below the announcement board, you'll see 4 quadrants. You see them on the screen. You see 2 of them are in gold and 1 is in gray. It depends on what role you've been given by your security manager. If you've not been given the preparer role or submitter role, you won't be able to create a submission or edit a submission. You will be able to go in and view. So that's the difference. So this is an example of someone who doesn't have the preparer role, and that create new submission is grayed out. If you do have the preparer role, then there'll be gold there where it says create a new submission. And if you press that, you're given some options here. The first thing you have to do is say, what kind of submission am I creating? So you have options there, that first line, and if you look off to the right, are you creating a budget or are you creating one of the types of CFRs? In this case, it's been marked that it's a full CFR. There's funding from 4 of the 5 state agencies for your programs. Those are all marked. You have to determine what cycle this is for. This is marked for a calendar 2023 CFR. You have an option here. Would you like to carry forward data from a previous submission? In almost all cases, the answer to that's going to be yes. In this case, we're marking it as no. That's creating a CFR from scratch. Underneath that is a submission description. This is recommended for budgets mainly because you may have a different budget for different contracts and you want to keep them straight. For CFRs, it's not necessary to give it your own name, but that's an option you have. Once you've marked that you're creating a new submission, it'll go to the provider agency definition where you go in and you provide information about your agency, your address, your school code if it's an SED CFR, and you have lots of information you start filling out through there. If you've marked that you would like to bring forward information from a prior submission, and that's what most of you are going to want to do, sometimes it really cuts down on the opportunities for error and omissions. If you bring it forward, it'll bring forward all the data on all your programs. It'll bring forward all the information about your provider agency address and all that. You may want to make sure that it's all currently, that it's all been updated. Once you've marked that you're going to bring forward, you have to designate what CFR you're going to bring the data forward from. And you'll see listings here for 2 different periods, reporting periods, and the DCN you see is the last CFR filed for that reporting period, assuming that your last one was your best one, and you would mark that you want to bring forward. And then you have a choice. From that previously submitted CFR, do you want to bring forward all data or master data only? Now, some of you are filing some of you might be filing a mini abbreviated for one contract or something, and it might be easy for you to just check all data, and that'll bring forward the expenses and revenues from the previous CFR, which you can then update. Most of you are going to choose to bring forward master data, which brings in all the information about your provider agency and also all the information about all the different programs that were included in that previous CFR. Now, if you look on that previous CFR, it was marked that there were 3 state agencies funding. It's telling you here that, hey, wait a minute, that CFR you wanted to bring the data forward from was funded by 4 different state agencies. Now, it may be that you got tired of Paul Green's nasty letters telling you to fix your CFR and you decided to drop that. Or it may be that you just made a mistake. In that case, you just hit back and then you can add OASIS to the, so you have 4 state agency funders again. Once you've done this correctly, you get this note here that there's been a carry forward that's completed. And what happens is it'll now go into the work in progress. But one thing you're going to have to do, no matter every time when you, even if you bring forward the data from the previous CFR, you have to go in to the agency definition and go down to where your financial statement start and finish dates have to be entered. This has to be entered new every year. You won't be able to get a DCN if you've left that information off. What you see there is a little calendar. That's what I always think that looks like a lunchbox, but that's supposed to be a calendar, and you click that, you mark the month and the year that the CFR or that your financial statement begins with. Make sure you change the date to the first of the month usually, and then you do the same thing for the end date. Let's say you brought forward data from a previous year, but you want to make a change to one of your programs. You can go in and you can either add a new program if that's what you need, or if you no longer have a program, that little icon on the far right of the screen is a garbage can. You can click that and that program or program site will disappear from the new CFR. If you just want to make some kind of editing, like you're changing the name you gave to the site that you created, you can use that little pencil there to make that change. If you're creating a new program, you've clicked add a program, you have to mark the box next to the state agency that funds that program. Once you do that, the next line for program, you'll see there's a down arrow at the end of that box. You click that and all the programs funded by that state agency will appear, and you'll choose the one that you want to add to your CFR. You then fill out the index you're using, the site code you're using, and then the site name and address and county where it's being provided. Now, I know that the site codes vary from state agency to state agency and sometimes from program to program. For OPWDD, if you look in Appendix G, each program will be listed and it'll give you some guidance as to what to use for a site code or what index information you need to provide. Here's an example of one that's been filled out. It's an OASIS program. It's got all the information on that site where it's being offered, and you can go then further and add more information. Now, the way it works, only one person can be working in a CFR at a time. So if you are an agency where you have multiple people who have to add information into the CFR, and the person who was working on it goes out to lunch or nods off at their desk, well, after 30 minutes of inactivity, they're automatically logged off. So then other people from your agency can get in and do their work. So let's say you did go out to lunch, you come back, you're going to enter some more data into the CFR. You would go to continue submission and upload CFRs, CPRs. And you see the gold box there says view in progress. And you go in there and you'll see there are different examples there of budgets or CFRs that have been started, but on the right side you see it says work in progress. And you can go in and continue your work on whichever one of these you need to do. Again, you can only have one CFR one CFR for each reporting period that has the same state agency funders listed. I sometimes get calls from people telling me that they're trying to get in to make some changes and the program won't let them. And usually that's because they chose to view the submission instead of editing the submission. If you choose view, you can go in and look at everything, but if there's a change you need to make or more information you need to add, you won't be able to do that. You have to choose the edit submission button to be able to take any action. You get a warning here when you go in that once you go into this one, none of your coworkers will be able to go into it and work in it. And you just go ahead and agree to that and go on. If a CFR has so you see options here. Let's say you've already gotten a DCN assigned for one of your CFRs you were working on, but you haven't submitted it yet. There are different options here. You can go in, you can continue the edit, you can stop the edit, which allows your coworker to get in. You can delete the submission, which is a risky thing to do. I'll talk about that in a second. But if you could choose to continue the submission, it's going to take you to where the agency definition again. You can take a look at that and then continue on. And it gives you that warning that once you go in here to work on this, nobody else is going to be able to go in there and work on it. If you choose to delete a submission, now you can't delete anything that's already been submitted to the state, but the work in progress, if you had a test you were working on to see how things would look and you're done with that, you can delete it. You can go ahead and delete anything from the work in progress, but you get the warning that it can't be undone. That's final once you do this. Here you can see if you've gone into the work in progress, you see what options you have in there to work with. You have a budget there that somebody started, hasn't finished. You have a CFR that the DCN was assigned, but it wasn't yet submitted. Some of you have thought that since it's in the CFRS Web, we could take a look at things, give you some advice. Until you submit something, we at the state don't have access to anything. The next thing you're going to want to do is submit your submission after you've got a DCN and you're happy with it. Now, if you don't have submitter privileges, you won't have this option. And if you haven't gotten a DCN assigned yet, you won't have this option. But once you do, you can hit the submit button and almost instantly we'll be able to take a look at the CFR you filed with us. Now, let's say you submitted a CFR, but then your CPA recommended some changes, or the state agency take a look at it later and ask you to make changes. You can go in and edit. Oh, this is that warning again about only one of you can be in at a time. But after you've hit the submit button and it goes in, then you get this confirmation that the submit, and it'll now be listed in the submission dashboard. It won't be the same quadrant where you had the work in progress. It'll be under the continue submission and upload completed CFRs. So if you go into that dashboard, you see for each period, you have a listing, and if you hit the down arrow, hit the arrow for that period, any CFRs that you've uploaded for that period will appear there. Now suppose you want to go in and make a revision to a CFR that's already been submitted. You go in and you choose to revise from the dashboard. You choose which one it's going to be, and when you're in there looking, you have options. You can limit what you see on the dashboard to just CFRs or just budgets, or you can have both of them listed. Some of the larger agencies may have a lot of budgets listed separately, so you may want to consider that option. Here's an example where you chose this reporting period, and you see there were 3 different CFRs with different DCNs uploaded for that reporting period. So now you're going to review or revise the submission. Again, if you choose view, you're not going to make any changes, but if you choose revise, you can get in, and now you get the warning that says, if you go in and make any changes to this, the DCN will no longer be valid. It basically makes a copy of the whole CFR without a DCN that you can go in and work on. So you've chosen to do that, but now you're getting this warning message. If you see the failure message, really, if you see the red at the bottom of the screen, it's telling you there's already a revision for that period in the work in progress, and so you can't have 2 at the same time in the work in progress. Let's say you got to upload your financial statement. You've already submitted your CFR, and now you're going to go in and submit your financial statement. You choose the review or revise CFRs. You mark what you pick the CFR that you're going to upload the financial statement for, and you go down, and then there's different categories of financial statements. You check the box that applies correctly. For CFR purposes, a consolidated CFR includes data for more than one corporate entity with a different FIN. So whereas a standalone, it's all for one corporate entity. Single audit has to do with federal programming funding. And you see the last thing on here is the parent agency admin allocation. That can be also added. You do these uploads one at a time. Here's an example where we marked and you put the date of when the end date of the financial statement is, and you hit the upload button, and well, you browse wherever you've got that financial statement file. It's a PDF on your computer. You browse to that, select it, and then you hit the upload button. If you go take a look at the dashboard, there's an uploaded documents line there under all the CFRs for reporting period. You click on that and it'll show you what's been uploaded for those CFRs. E-signing. All right. This is going to be more work for your executive director, but it's going to cut down on a lot of errors. There's not a week goes by that we don't reject certifications that came to us because the signer didn't put the date on the certification. So this is going to be quicker. There's no longer printing and signing and scanning and then uploading. Now it's a matter of going in and e-signing the document. So you have to have the document already submitted first, and you have to have the e-sign role assigned to you by your security manager. So they go in, you can pick the document that you want to e-sign, or for the DCN that you want to e-sign the document for. And you see here, the executive director's gone in, and you see 3 e-signs in gold. Those are the 3 certifications that the executive director is authorized to e-sign. And he has to do this one at a time, but you select, let's say, the CFRI first, and it's going to take you first to information about the agency, so that if there's any updates that need to be made here, they can be made. Then you're going to get to this screen, and it looks like it's a failure. What it is when the security manager entered the name of the person who's going to have the executive director e-sign privilege, they enter their name and their email address, and that comes forward into this document. What the security manager doesn't have the ability to do is to enter the title and the phone number for that person. So the executive director is going to have to go in and fill those 2 lines out. And you see here's the way it is. See the 3 lines there, the 2 first, last name, and the email are gray. Those come forward, but the white lines are enterable. And that's what, after the executive director filled those out, then now that's there, and then they can click the e-signature button, and the that certification will be signed. Now, if you go back to look at the submissions, you'll see that there's a CFRI. It's now, it says it's been who it's signed by and the date and time that it was signed. Now you have to repeat the process for, say, the CFR III. This information, I believe, will be in there after you've done the first one. And then you click on the button for that one and then go in for the IV. You see this wording underneath all the information? that has to be clicked each time you hit that checkbox, and it's basically swearing that you're who you say you are and you reviewed everything and it's correct to the best of your knowledge. So now you see all those have been e-signed. We still have to get the CFR IIA signed, and it's possible the county will have to sign a III. Here's an example of a III. The county director has gone in and he now sees that he can go in and e-sign the III here. If you go, there's a new line now. There's upload documents and then there's e-sign documents listed. And if you click on that, you can see what's been e-signed. Here's an example of what the CFRI looks like after it's been e-signed. The name is listed here, and then underneath that, the executive director's name. Underneath that, you see when it was electronically signed, the date and the time. All this information will be included, plus the DCNs automatically in there, so we don't have the problem of people printing the certifications before the DCNs are signed. So this should eventually help everybody out. Like I said, the executive director's got to do a little more work than he did before, but it's going to cut down on a lot of the issues that we've had with faulty CFRs coming in. If you remember back to that, one of the first screens I showed you, there were 4 quadrants. Create a new CFR, edit CFRs, work in progress. The 4th was the link that takes you for different things. You can go to look at the manual, you can go to get information on training, perhaps look at the slides from a previous training session. You can also get contact information for the CFR units in Albany, who can reach out to, and if you're having trouble for some reason, we recommend you reach out to the CFR unit before you try the help desk, because oftentimes they just take the information and then pass it to us anyway, and we are the first line to try to solve your problem for you. And then it's time for me to hand it off to the next panelist. And I'm looking for her name here. There she is.
Thank you, Francis. Good morning, everyone. This is Lisa Vickery from Oasis CFR Unit, and today I will be going over the menu and certification schedules. The first thing to remember is that you must be actively editing a CFR to have full use of the menu options. Once you're in the CFR, you can use the menu to navigate between schedules. The menu icon can be found in the top left corner of any page in CFRS Web. Once selected, the expanded menu will be visible on the left side of the screen. The menu lists the schedules in the recommended order of completion. However, you may complete the schedules in any order. If you choose to complete schedules out of order, remember that specific data will not be seen until the feeder schedule is completed. Once the feeder schedule is completed, that information is carried forward to another schedule. For example, on a full CFR, the information entered on the CFR4 Program Site Specific tab is carried forward to the Personal Services line on CFR1, line 16, and the information entered on the CFR4 Agency Administration Specific tab is carried forward to the Personal Services line on CFR3, line 1. Each screen has a Next Schedule and Previous Schedule button at the bottom of the page. By default, the Next Schedule button follows the recommended order of completion. The gold line indicates where you are in the menu. Currently, the gold line is on the Provider Agency Definition screen. If you're completing a CFR for the first time, you will need the following information regarding your agency to complete the provider agency definition screen: your 5-digit agency code, the legal name of your organization as listed in your financial statements, the street address and county of your administrative headquarters, ownership type, not-for-profit, proprietary, or governmental, federal ID number, and your agency's audited financial statement reporting period. For first-time filers, the bolded lines indicate required information and must be manually completed. If you imported data from a prior period CFR, the information will be transferred and should always be reviewed for accuracy. The start and end date of your financial statements does not transfer and will always need to be completed. If you're completing a CFR for the first time, you will need the following information regarding your agency's programs and sites: the types of programs your agency operates, the New York State agencies that certify or fund the programs, and for each program being operated, you will need the 4-digit program code and 2-digit index code, the site code, or PRU for OASIS, and the physical address and county of the program site location. First-time filers will need to enter this information manually. If you imported data from a prior period CFR, the information will be transferred as long as the program code is still valid for the current reporting period. This screen has 3 options. Add a program by clicking on the button at the top right, and make sure to click Save after completing the data entry. Edit a program by clicking the pencil icon, and make sure to click Update after making the edit. Delete a program by clicking on the trash can, and no further action is required. When adding a shared program, all New York State agencies involved should be selected. The certification schedules are as follows: CFR-I, CFR-II, Compliance Review, CFR-III, and CFR-IV. Based on your agency's ownership and CFR submission type, the certification schedules that require data input will be listed in the menu. To determine what certification schedules are required, please refer to sections 2, 11, 12, and 62 of the CFR manual. The CFR-I is used to report agency identifying data and serves as a certification statement by the agency's CEO attesting to the validity of the information contained in the document and is required for all CFR submissions. Information in the gray area is non-enterable and has been carried forward from the provider definition screen. All bolded fields must be completed. Use the checkboxes provided to indicate if any contact information has changed from the prior period submission. This would include changes to the following: agency address, contact person, who is also referred to as the fiscal contact and should be the person able to answer questions regarding the CFR, the Chief Executive Officer or CEO, who is responsible for signing the CFR-I, the President or Chair Board of Directors, and the claims contact. If your agency receives state aid from OASIS, OMH, or OPWDD, this should be the person who can answer questions regarding the claim. Up-to-date CEO and fiscal contact emails are essential to receive communication from the New York State agencies. If the contact person and claims contact are the same, click Copy Contact. The information will be automatically filled in. Once completed, select Next Schedule to proceed. In summary, the CFR-I is required for all CFR submissions, requires contact information for the agency's fiscal contact and executive director, requires President, Chair, Board of Directors contact information for not-for-profit corporations, It is optional for proprietary service providers and is not required for governmental entities. A signed CFRI schedule must be submitted through CFRS Web using the Executive Director e-sign role and e-sign feature. Once e-signed, a date and time stamp will be applied. The CFR-II is the Independent Accountant's Report and is required for most full CFR submissions. This schedule must be completed after the required schedules have been examined and certified and the overall financial statement presentation has been evaluated. Imported data should be reviewed for accuracy. In summary, the CFR-II has replaced the CFR-II and is required for most full CFR submissions. This schedule will be used regardless of whether the CFR and financial statement periods are the same or different. It is not required for abbreviated, Article 28 abbreviated, or mini abbreviated CFRs. A signed CFR-II schedule must be submitted through CFRS Web using the CPA e-sign role and e-sign feature by an independent certified public accountant, sole practitioner, partner of the CPA firm, or the CPA firm that audited and certified the CFR. Once e-signed, a date and time stamp will be applied. Counties, municipalities, and other governmental entities completing a full CFR may submit either a CFR-II or compliance review. The provider will need to select the schedule to be e-signed by the CPA from the drop-down box in the CFR-II/compliance review screen of the CFR. The compliance review addresses the agreed-upon procedures as specified in Appendix CC and should include the DCN of the CFR submission that was reviewed. The compliance review schedule has been added to CFRS Web for governmental entities. It includes the same language as the Independent Accountant's Report on applying agreed-upon procedures from Appendix CC. An enterable line has been added regarding the sentence that states, "The following information and findings came to our attention from performing the procedures described in this report. Itemize all information and findings, if none, so state." Additional lines were added to the compliance review schedule regarding the CPA peer review and CPA registration with the State Education Department. A signed compliance review must be submitted through CFRS Web using the CPA e-sign role and e-sign feature by an independent certified public accountant, sole practitioner, partner of the CPA firm, or the CPA firm that audited and certified the CFR. Once e-signed, a date and time stamp will be applied. The CFR-III must be completed if state aid, which is also known as net deficit funding, is received through a local county contract or a direct contract with OASIS, OMH, and/or OPWDD. It is not required for providers that operate only rate-based and/or unfunded programs. It is also not required for DOH and SED providers. If your agency is funded through a direct or local contract, required e-signatures are as follows. If you received funding through a direct contract, your agency's executive director will e-sign the left side. If you received funding through a local contract, your agency's executive director will e-sign the left side, and the county's Director of Community Mental Health Services will e-sign the right side. All governmental entities receiving local funding must have the middle section e-signed by the agency's Chief Fiscal Officer and the right side e-signed by the Director of Community Mental Health Services. For local contract-funded providers, once the Executive Director e-signs their portion of the CFR-III, it will then be available for the County Director's e-signature. Governmental entities must have a signed CFR III submitted through CFRS Web using the Chief Fiscal Officer e-sign role and e-sign feature and the County Director e-sign role and e-sign feature. Once the Chief Fiscal Officer e-signs the middle section, it will then be available for the County Director's e-signature. Once e-signed, a date and time stamp will be applied. The CFRIV schedule is required as part of the full, abbreviated, or Article 28 abbreviated CFR submissions of not-for-profit and proprietary providers submitting to OASIS, OMH, OPWDD, and SED. It's a series of yes, no, or non-applicable questions regarding the fiscal status of the agency. Question 4 was divided into 4A and 4B and refers to single audits. Question 13 refers to SED providers only. The CFRIV schedule is used to report agency identifying data and serves as a certification statement by the service provider's Chief Executive Officer attesting to the validity of the information contained in the document under the penalties prescribed in accordance with Article 175 of New York State Penal Law or false written statements. It is not required for governmental service providers or many abbreviated CFRs. A signed CFRIV must be submitted through CFRS Web using the Executive Director e-sign role and e-sign feature. Once e-signed, a date and time stamp will be applied. This is the end of my section. Let's take a 5-minute break before the next presenter starts.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ann Hoffman from the Office of Mental Health. I will be presenting Schedule CFR 4, CFR 4A, and CFR 1. CFR 4, Personal Services. CFR 4 is a 2-tab data entry string. The first tab is Program Site, Program Admin, LGU Admin. The second tab is Agency Admin. If you are completing the Program Site tab, select a state agency, program, and site from the drop-down boxes. If you transfer data from a prior period, some rows may be pre-populated. If you wish to create a new row of data, select Add a Line. Next, select the desired position title code from the drop-down box. Then enter the standard work week, aggregate total hours paid, and amount paid for all individuals working in the specified position title code. Repeat the steps for each additional position title code. CFRS Web will calculate the FTEs to 3 decimal places. To delete an entire row of data, click on the trash can icon located in the desired row. If applicable, completion of the informational-only section is required. The total hours paid and total amount paid should include the amounts of overtime reported. The informational-only section includes overtime hours included in total hours paid, overtime amount included in total amount paid, average hourly rate, and annualized salary. The average hourly rate and annualized salary columns in the informational-only section will only appear in the software. Located at the far right of the screen is the total for the program site reporting for each position title code sharing the same standard work week. The column headers are as follows: total hours paid, FTE, total amount paid. To complete the Agency Administration Personal Services, select the Agency Administration tab and follow the same process. Only 600 series position title codes are available for use. Only personal services related to employees of your agency are reported on this schedule. Individuals who receive W-2s are considered to be employees. The separate Schedule CFR-4 is completed for the agency administration personal service expenses of your entire agency. 100% of the amounts paid for agency administration staff must be reported. CFR-4 is included in all CFR submission types. New York State agency-specific and shared program-specific CFR-4s are prepared for staff providing program services. Agency administration staff is reported in a single column on a separate Schedule CFR-4. All agency administration staff is reported in this column regardless of the size of the New York State agency programs in relation to the total agency. Individuals receiving 1099 tax forms are considered to be independent contractors. Position title codes are listed in Appendix R. The positions are functional titles and may not match the corporate titles used by your agency. Position title codes may be specific to New York State agencies or program types. For example, Position Title Code 211 will not be an option in the drop-down list for an OPWD program. $100-level position title codes are for support staff. 200-level are for direct care staff. 300-level are clinical staff. 400-level production staff. 500-level program administration staff. 600-level agency administration staff. 700-level local government unit staff only. Direct care and clinical staff hours are a key component of the rate rationalization process for OPWDD. Please be sure to give your staff the appropriate position title codes. The standard work week must be at least 35 hours, but no more than 45 hours per week. The hours paid, FTEs, and amount paid totals are shown by column. Where applicable, employees' hours and salaries paid should be allocated between programs and/or position title codes. Calculation of FTEs. It's the hours paid divided by the standard work week times 52 weeks. For example, the FTT calculation for a position where the standard full-time work week is 35 hours per week and the employee worked 22.5 hours a week for 40 weeks during the fiscal year. This example shows the calculation of the FTE and represents the most complicated calculation, a less than full-time employee who worked for less than a full year. CFRS Web does all the calculations for you. The totals of the CFR4 input carry forward to CFR1, line 16 for full CFRs, CFR3, line 1 for full CFRs, DMH1, line 6 for abbreviated and Article 28 abbreviated CFRs. CFR4A, contracted direct care and clinical personal services. This schedule is used to report the amount paid to individuals and/or organizations that have contracted with the service provider to provide direct care and/or clinical personal services. All other contracted services must be reported on the appropriate expense line of the CFR1 or CFR3 schedule. It is the same data entry process as CFR4, except the input of the standard work week is not required. Direct care hours, that's 200 to 299 position title codes, and clinical hours, that's 300 to 399 position title codes, are an important part of OPWD's rate rationalization formula. Be sure to report an accurate total for contracted hours on the CFR4A. Only contracted direct care and clinical staff positions are reported on this schedule. Contracted staff includes those individuals that are not issued a W-2 by the provider agency. Position title codes are found in Appendix R of the CFR manual. Report hours paid and amount paid. The hours paid field cannot be left blank. Total contracted direct care and clinical personal services carries forward to CFR 1, line 35. CFR 4A is only included in full CFR submission types. If contracted staff are not paid by the hour, an estimate of hours paid must be made. Entries of 0 or 1 hour will not generally be accepted. Questions regarding whether an individual is a contractor or an employee should be directed to the IRS, the service provider's accountant, and/or tax attorney. CFR 1, Program Site Data, General Information. CFR 1 is a 3-tab data entry screen: General Information, Expenses, and Revenues. To enter program site data, select the state agency, program, and site from the drop-down boxes. Gray fields are non-enterable. The data is populated from a different schedule or screen. Data on lines 1 through 6 and 8 carries forward from the program site definition screen. From Medicaid eligible programs, report both the Medicaid Provider Agreement number and the National Provider ID number, NPI. Both numbers should be associated with the program site being reported. CFR 1 is only included in full CFR submission types. CFR 1 is a state agency specific program site shared program specific schedule. Line 13, units of service. It is critical that units of service delivered during the reporting period are captured, counted, and reported accurately and correctly. Inaccurate units of service reported is cause for rejection of submitted CFRs. It is expected that providers will train staff regarding the appropriate measurement of units of service for the program types they operate. See appendices E, F, G, H, and HH. Ensure that information is recorded at the time the service is delivered, and make data available in the format of the CFR. OASIS programs. Units of service should be similar to those reported by the entity to the OASIS client data system through the monthly service delivery function, except when the reporting guidance varies. Refer to Appendix E for individual program CFR reporting requirements. OMH programs. OMH units of service carry forward from the OMH 1 schedule. There will be more on OMH 1 later. The units of service reported are accrued based on the date of service, not the date of payment. All units of service provided must be reported, including those for which no payment was received. Line 13 has specific lines for reporting various types of units of service as follows. 13A, Medicaid fee-for-service. 13B, Medicaid managed care. 13C, all other units of service. Refer to page 13.5 of the CFR manual for additional guidance. CFR 1, Program Site Data Expenses. There are more expense lines that can be displayed on one screen. Use the scroll bar on the right side of the screen to access the lines not displayed. Remember, expenses and revenues are reported on the accrual basis of accounting. The expense categories: personal services, vacation leave accruals, fringe benefits, other than personal services, equipment, property, and agency administration. Line 16, personal services. Information is carried forward from Schedule CFR 4. Line 17, vacation leave accruals. Report the increase or decrease in vacation accruals from the previous year. Line 18, mandated fringe benefits. Includes FICA, Medicare, workers' comp, unemployment insurance, New York State disability, and New York State family leave. Line 19, non-mandated fringe benefits. Includes health insurance, dental insurance, and pension. Line 22, repairs and maintenance. Includes costs for maintenance and minor repairs, as well as contracts for housekeeping, garbage, and snow removal. Line 26, participant incidental. Includes costs associated with participant entertainment, recreation, summer camps, clothing. Line 28, expensed equipment. The cost of all program, site, and/or program administration, non-adaptive equipment purchased during the cost report period with a value of less than $5,000 or a useful life of less than 2 years. Refer to Appendix O of the CFR manual for more information regarding how equipment is reported on the CFR. Line 35, contracted direct care and clinical personal services. The information is carried forward from Schedule CFR 4A. Line 36, supplies and materials, non-household. Includes costs for program supplies, medical supplies, printing, copying, postage, computer software. Line 39, general insurance. The insurance costs for general liability, bonding, professional and medical malpractice, vehicle or other insurance costs related to program site and program administration. Do not report insurance expenses related to equipment or property on this line. CFR 1 expenses, other lines. The OTPS, equipment, and property categories each have an other line for miscellaneous items. Information is entered through a line detail box. Detail is required for individual items costing $1,000 or more. Individual items costing less than $1,000 each may be grouped together as all items less than $1,000 each. CFRS Web line detail box example. Data input for lines with a line detail box icon can only be entered by clicking on the icon to the right of the line. Line detail boxes are customized to meet specific New York State agency needs with predefined item descriptions. Additional item descriptions can be added by clicking Add a Line and typing in the new description. Be specific in your description. Data entered in the line detail box is totaled, and the details are shown on the worksheet details section of the CFR. Do not report items on line 40, OTPS Other, that should be reported on a specifically defined line. Following are two examples of items reported on CFR 1 line 40, which should have been reported on predefined lines. Copying, printing, postage of $1,227 should be reported on line 36, supplies and materials, non-household. Rubbish removal of $3,999 should be reported on line 22, repairs and maintenance. The predefined entry, bad debt, has been changed to bad debt and/or credit losses. Bad debt expense and/or credit losses should be reported on the appropriate schedule as follows. CFR 1, line 40, and adjusted out is not allowable on line 66. CFR 2, column 9, line 4, and adjusted out is not allowable on line 8. CFR 3, line 17, and adjusted out is not allowable on line 41. Refer to the FAQ on page 8.13 of the CFR manual for further guidance. Certain assets are depreciated. Line 44, vehicle. Line 45, equipment. Line 51, building. Line 52, building and/or land improvements. All items with an individual cost of $5,000 or more and a useful life of 2 or more years must be depreciated. Refer to Appendix O of the CFR manual for guidance on capitalization and depreciation. Group purchases of like items should be treated as a single purchase. Group purchases of unlike items should be treated as if each item was purchased individually. Telephone systems and computer systems should be treated as a group purchase. CFR 1, expenses. These are adjustments, non-allowable costs. Line 66, enter the description, line number, and amount of all non-allowable expenses reported on any line of the CFR 1 in the line detail box. Negative numbers cannot be entered in the line detail box. Refer to Appendix X for some, but not all, non-allowable costs. Report the amount in excess of actual cost or fair market value for related party transactions disclosed on CFR 5 as an adjustment on CFR 1, line 66. In the line detail box, the line number refers to where the individual expense is originally reported and is being adjusted out as not allowable on line 66. OPWD only informational lines, F and G, are for reporting phase 1 of the workforce stabilization, and lines H and I are for reporting phase 2 of the workforce stabilization. Line 68A, B, D, E, F, G, H, and I will be discussed during the OPWD agency-specific section. CFR 1 revenues. Remember, expenses and revenues are reported on the accrual basis of accounting. Line 69, participant fees. Report revenues received from program participants in excess of SSI and SSA. Line 72A, Medicaid fee for service. A revenue category representing payments received for services to eligible participants under the combined federal-state program, which pays for medical care for those who cannot afford it regardless of age. Line 72B, Medicaid managed care. The delivery system of Medicaid health benefits and additional services through contracted arrangements between state Medicaid agencies and managed care organizations that accept a set per member per month payment for these services. Line 74, other third parties. The revenue from private health insurance coverage, which includes but is not limited to Blue Cross, HMOs, and other insurance carriers. Line 79, federal grants. Report grant revenues received directly from an administering federal government agency in support of the service providers programs. CFRS Web includes the following predefined entries: the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Education, Health and Human Services, Justice, and Labor. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development is for OASIS only. CFRS Web has been modified to include predefined entries for Paycheck Protection Program, PPP, Economic Injury Disaster Loan Emergency Advance, EIDL, and Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, grants. Do not include federal grant revenue received from OASIS, OMH, OPWD, and DOH as aid to localities funding. For the Paycheck Protection Program, PPP, report only the amount of the PPP loan that was forgiven and recorded as revenue or as a gain on the extinguishment of debt. Additional lines are available by use of the Add a Line button in CFRS Web. Line 80, state grants. Report grant revenues received from New York State agencies other than the CFR reporting agencies. CFRS Web includes the following predefined entries: New York State Department of Health, Labor, Transportation, the Division of Criminal Justice Services, Housing and Community Renewal, Parole, Veterans Affairs, in the Office of Children and Family Services. This does not include monies received from OASIS, OMH, OPWD, and/or SED, and does not include aid to localities funding received from OASIS, OMH, and/or OPWD. Instead, those monies would be reported as net deficit funding on line 93. Line 82, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP. Report food-related revenues. This is for OASIS and OPWD programs only. Line 83, Gifts, Legacies, Bequests, Donations. Report the monetary contribution revenue derived from gifts, legacies, bequests, and donations. Non-monetary donations and/or contributions are reported as reconciling items on the reconciliation if the schedule is required. Please see the FAQ section of the CFR manual for additional guidance. Line 86, Prior Period Rate Adjustments. Report the revenue from a rate appeal, rate adjustment, or retroactive contingency contract. Do not include net deficit funding amounts on this line. SED. Report any reconciliation adjustments from a prior period, including any reconciliation tuition adjustments included as part of the prospective tuition rate. This is not applicable to OASIS and OMH service providers. OPWD. Medicaid recoveries should also be reported on this line. Lines 93 and 103, net deficit funding. Funds received by the local government unit from a DMH state agency and passed on to the service provider. Funds received directly from a DMH state agency through a direct contract. Funds received directly from the funding local government unit. Line 94, other revenue. Some examples include, for OASIS, closely allied entity revenue for opioid settlement funds. For OMH, safety net payments, vital access providers Medicaid revenue. For OPWD, assistive supports revenue, revenue for non-Medicaid eligible individuals under predefined OPWD state paid. CFR 1 revenues, other lines. The revenues, GAAP adjustments to revenues, and non-GAAP adjustments to revenues categories each have an other line for miscellaneous items. Information is entered through a line detail box. Detail is required for individual items of $1,000 or more. Individual items less than $1,000 each may be grouped together as all items less than $1,000 each. This concludes my portion of the presentation. I will pass off the presentation to our next presenter.
Thank you, Anne. Good morning, everyone. My name is Evelyn Turnbow. I work in the State Education Department, and today I'll be presenting the CFR2, CFR2A, and the CFR3. Here's a screenshot of the CFR2. You'll see that only column 9 is enterable. The data for columns 2 through 8 carry forward from DMH1, and column 1 is calculated by the CFRS Web, summing the totals of columns 2 through 9. Please note that column 1, lines 7, 9, and 10 should match the respective categories in your financial statements. If there is a discrepancy between the CFR2 and your financial statements, it should be explained through the input on the reconciliation. A sample of the CFR2 can be found on page 35 of the CFR sample provided. It is required for full and abbreviated CFRs only. It is not required for Article 28 abbreviated or mini abbreviated CFRs. The CFR2 captures the expenses and revenues for the entire agency and is an agency-wide schedule. The total for each New York State agency are displayed in separate columns. Any agency's activities, not inclusive of state programs, are to be reported in column 9, other programs. Also reported in column 9 are expenses and revenues relating to fundraising and special events, realized and unrealized gains and losses, and management services expenses provided to another provider agency on an ongoing basis. The provider agency totals reported in column 1 will be compared to your financial statement totals. If the reporting periods are the same, any discrepancies will need to be explained in the reconciliation. Please note that fundraising and fundraising special events are not considered agency administration expenses and cannot be reported on the CFR 3. And it is expected that the CFR reporting of fundraising and special events will match the reporting in your agency's financial statements. Operating expenses reported on CFR 2 are used to distribute agency administration expenses between the CFR reporting programs. Operating expenses include personal services, vacation leave accruals, fringe benefits, and OTPS less raw materials. Reconciliation. The reconciliation schedule is not required and or not available if the CFR reporting period and the financial statement period are different. If a reconciliation schedule is required, it must be completed to pass validation. A sample of the reconciliation can be found on page 96 of the CFR sample provided. Governmental entities, Article 28 abbreviated and mini abbreviated CFR filers are not required to complete this reconciliation. For a required reconciliation, the amount calculated as the difference in the worksheet should be less than $100 to pass validations. Reconciliation expenses. Here you report the sum of total expenses and total losses as reported in the financial statements. Using the additions and subtractions drop-down detail boxes, report the expenses and losses included in the CFR2 that were not included in the financial statements. Reconciliation revenues. Common reconciling items may be reported as additions and or subtractions in the reconciliation schedule, such as elimination of intercompany expenses and revenues, depreciation differences, where differing allowable depreciation methods have been reported in the CFR and statement of activities expense in the financial statements, and other. Here you can report any other item differences between the financial statements and the CFR that are not reported as adjustments and or non-allowable costs on CFR 1 or CFR 3. A description should be added with any items reported here. Also note the rounding field where any remaining difference between expenses reported on the financial statements and the CFR should be reported. CFR 2A. The CFR 2A schedule must be completed by all not-for-profit and proprietary providers when financial statements are required to be submitted. It is not required for Article 28 abbreviated filers, mini abbreviated filers, and governmental entities. This schedule is used to report data from your financial statements that were submitted in accordance with sections 2 and 6, and also data from the underlying year and adjusted accounting records that support these financial statements. The purpose of the schedule is to collect data in a uniform way in order for each state agency to have it readily available for provider-specific fiscal analysis as well as industry-wide statistics. Instructions for completing Schedule CFR 2A can be found in Section 14 of the CFR Manual. A sample of the CFR 2A can be found on pages 36 through 38 of the CFR sample provided. Here's a snapshot of the CFR 2A and how it looks in the CFRS Web. Here's another snapshot of it. COVID-19. On this line, you report the total amount of revenue and gains on the extinguishment of debt recorded in the CFR reporting period that was attributable to COVID-19 funding, grants, loan forgiveness, contributions and or donations, awards, and or tax credits. You will include in total revenue and gains the COVID-19 grants awarded from federal and or state agencies, counties, and private foundations, such as SBA, FEMA, FCC, etc., the amount of the Paycheck Protection Program loan that was forgiven and recorded as revenue or as a gain on the extinguishment of debt, the COVID-19 federal tax credits that were recorded as revenue, and also donations received as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. The total revenue and gains will be reported on an accrual basis of accounting. CFR 3, Agency Administration. Agency administration consists of the costs associated with the overall direction of the agency, general record keeping and financial management, governing board activities, and public relations. Direct identification of specific expenses is the preferred method for charging expenses to various functions. Furthermore, indirect costs are those activities or services that benefit more than one project or activity and may require to be allocated. In this case, the allocation method must be reasonable, consistent, and reviewed by management. Some examples of these expenses may include time studies, square footage, actual use, and percentage of direct cost. Please note that proper documentation should be retained regarding the methods used. Providers should consult the CFR manual, appendices I and K upon reporting these costs. Full CFR filers report the agency administration costs for the entire provider agency on a single CFR 3 schedule. Abbreviated CFR filers complete the agency administration worksheet in lieu of a CFR 3. You can find a sample of the CFR 3 on pages 39 through 40 of the CFR sample provided. This is an agency-wide schedule. The CFR 3 is a 3-tab data entry screen. The first being personal services, fringe benefits, and other than personal services. Second being equipment and property. And the third, ratio value. Whoops, sorry guys. Expense categories. The expense categories for the CFR 3 are personal services from Schedule CFR 4, vacation leave accruals, fringe benefits, other than personal services, equipment, property, and parent agency administration allocation. Remember, fundraising and fundraising special events costs are not to be reported on the CFR 3. They are to be reported in full on CFR 2, column 9. If parent agency administration allocation is reported on line 38, documentation of the administration allocation must be submitted with the certification schedules. This must include total parent agency cost, total allocated cost to each of the subordinate agencies, and the basis used for the allocation. Section 15 of the CFR manual was revised to provide additional guidance on reporting parent agency administration allocation on CFR 3, line 38, if needed. Line 6, audit, legal, and accounting, includes the cost of other accounting services such as payroll services and CFR audit costs. Line 14, contracted personal services such as management consulting services, IT support, and more are reported. Items with a cost in excess of $5,000 must be listed in the line detail box separately by description and amount. Items costing less than $5,000 each may be aggregated and listed as all items less than $5,000. Please note that costs to develop internal use software during the application development stage are capitalized and not included on this line. Please refer to U.S. GAAP Codification of Accounting Standards, topic 350-40 for internal use software and topic 350-50 for website developmental costs. Line 16, Insurance General. Insurance costs for general liability, bonding, professional malpractice, vehicle, or other insurance costs related to agency administration are reported here. Do not report insurance expenses related to equipment or property on this line. Here you'll see a screenshot of the CFR 3 Equipment Property tab and what it would look like. CFR3 expenses, other lines. The OTPS equipment and property categories each have an other line for miscellaneous items. Information is entered through a line detail box, and details required for individual items costing $1,000 or more. Individual items costing less than $1,000 each may be grouped together as all items less than $1,000 each. Please note, if the total of the grouped items is excessive, you may be asked for a detailed breakdown. Line 41, adjustments and/or non-allowable costs. Enter the description, line number, and amount of all non-allowable expenses reported in any line of the CFR3 in the line detail box. Please refer to Appendix X for some, but not all, non-allowable costs. Report the amount in excess of actual cost or fair market value for all administrative related party transactions disclosed on the CFR 5. The amounts as entered must be greater than or equal to 0. Line 42, net agency administration, is the amount to be allocated using the ratio value method. As you can see here, this is the ratio value tab for the CFR3. All the data elements are populated by the CFRS Web. All calculations are also performed by the CFRS Web, and calculated values are carried forward to the CFR1, CFR2, and DMH1. CFR3 ratio value allocation. The total corporate agency administration expenses are allocated to all agency funding sources using the ratio value method. The ratio value method uses operating costs of the program sites as the basis of the allocation. Operating costs are defined as personal services, vacation leave accruals, fringe benefits, and OTPS less raw materials. Schedule CFR3 uses a two-step process to allocate agency administration costs. CFRS Web completes all these calculations for you, thankfully. This is step 1 of the ratio value allocation. Total corporate agency administration expenses from CFR3, line 42, are allocated to each funding New York State agency. Operating costs for program code 0880 and 0890 are excluded from this ratio value calculation. Step 1 of the calculation steps are as follows. The total agency operating costs are carried forward from CFR2 columns 2 through 9 to CFR3 lines 43 through 50 and are totaled on line 51. Line 51 is then carried forward to line 53. The net agency administration is carried forward from CFR3 line 42 to CFR3 line 52. Line 52 is then divided by line 53 to develop the 6-digit ratio value factor on line 54. The ratio value factor is applied to the operating costs on CFR3 lines 43 through 50 to calculate each funding source's share of agency administration costs, and the allocation is then displayed on lines 55 through 62. Step 2 of the ratio value allocation. A second ratio value allocation is performed at the state agency level, exempting additional New York State agency specific programs. A list of the program codes not included in Step 2 calculation can be found in Section 15 of the CFR manual. The second step of the ratio value allocation within the New York State agency shares assigned in Step 1, allowing additional specified program types to be exempted. These exempted programs are OPWDD, program code 0190, and OMH program codes 0860, 0870, 1230, 1690, 2740, 2850, 2860, 2980, 6920, 8810, and programs with an A program code index. The adjusted ratio value factors are displayed on lines 71 through 77. The agency admin worksheet. This is for those using the agency admin worksheet in lieu of the CFR3. Agency administration must be calculated using the ratio value method. You will enter total agency administration expenses on line 8, and the CFRS Web does the rest. Please note there is no sample of the agency admin worksheet in the CFR sample provided. All agencies have agency administration expenses. Agency administration expenses need to be distributed to all activities fairly. Ratio value is the required method used to allocate agency administration expenses on the core reports. Ratio value is based on operating costs. In calculating expected administrative and overhead expenses, hospitals should use the most recent available allocation percentages from the step-down derived from the latest institutional cost report for the period submitted to the Department of Health, Office of Health Insurance Programs, as per Appendix Y. For more information on the CFR3 schedule, please see Section 15 of the CFR manual. For more information on agency administration in general, please see Appendix I, Section 42 of the CFR manual. Please refer to Appendix T, Section 53 for more information on how to calculate agency administration on an abbreviated CFR. This concludes my part of the presentation, and now I will pass it on to Emily at OPWDD. Thank you.
Sorry for a second, forgot to unmute myself, but my name is Emily Stewart from OPWDD, and I will begin with the CFR5. CFR5 is required for all submission types, but Article 28 abbreviated. This schedule is used to report any activity that may be considered a conflict of interest, such as, but not limited to, transactions between family members, a key person of the provider or their relative having financial interest in the organization, if an individual has financial interest in both the service provider and the related organization, if another entity has financial interest in the organization, or if the service provider has financial interest in another entity. It should be noted for OASIS and OPWDD providers that the term related organizations and/or individuals is outlined in Article 25.06 of Mental Hygiene Law. OASIS providers should also refer to the administrative and fiscal guidelines for OASIS providers. Further detail regarding accounting standards can be found in Section 18 of the manual. Some of the aforementioned transactions require disclosure in financial statements. CFR 5 begins with 2 yes or no questions that must be answered. If the answer to both is no, you are done with the schedule and you can move on along to CFR 6. If yes is selected for question number 1, you must fill out Section B for OASIS, OMH, SED, OPWDD, DOH providers, or else an error message will pop up. The same applies to question number 2. If this is answered yes for OASIS, OMH, SED, OPWDD, and DOH providers, then Section D must be filled out. If not, there will be an error message reminding you. Again, question number 1 was answered yes, then Section B is where the details of the transaction are reported. You must select Add a Line at the bottom of the page to begin entering in all the details. In column 2, the trans ID will be automatically generated by CFRS Web. In column 3, you must select 3 programs or sites that are affected from the drop-down box. In column 4, you type in the description of the transaction, for example, a property lease rental. In column 5, this is pretty straightforward, the name of the related organization or individual. Column 6 is where the relationship to the provider is selected from the drop-down box. More detailed descriptions of the options can be found in Manual Section 18 in the Relationship key. Column 7 is straightforward, the amount of said transaction. Column 8 is the total allowable cost of the transaction, which is the lower of the related organization or individual's actual cost of the fair market value of providing the service or supply. Column 9, adjustments to cost, is calculated by subtracting column 8 from column 7. This cannot be entered directly. Lease or rental agreements reported in Section B must be detailed in Section C. The expenses detailed in Section C should be the related organization or individual's actual costs in operating the building used by the service provider and not the rental payments made to the related organization or individual. If a space lease or rental transaction relates to more than 3 programs, sites, and administration, more details should be provided for the top 3 most affected programs or sites listed in column 3 of Section B. Again, to begin filling out this section, you must click Add a Line at the bottom. In column 2, select the corresponding trans ID from Section B. In column 3, select the program and sites affected. Columns 4, depreciation, 5, mortgage interest, 6, insurance, 7, property taxes must all be filled out. Any other expenses should be completed in column 8, other. Any items entered in this column more than $1,000 must be listed in the worksheet separated by description and amount. Any items less than $1,000 may be aggregated and listed as all items less than $1,000 each, with the combined total amount. Column 9 will automatically take the sum of columns 4 through 8 for each item. Before moving on to the next section, please make sure that any adjustments to allowable costs from column 9 are reported on CFR 1, line 66, CFR 3, line 41, and DMH 1, line 13. Here's a screenshot of where the adjustment to the allowable costs in CFR 5 must also be reported on CFR 1, line 66. In the description, adjustment to lease. Section D must be filled out by OASIS, OMH, OPW, DD, and DOH providers if question number 2 was answered yes, which was that the provider received any financial assistance or if the provider provided any financial aid. Column 2, the trans ID will be auto-generated. Column 3 lists the name of the party or individual. Columns 4 through 5, the address. Column 6, enter the kind of financial aid. In column 7, you must select either the funding to or funding from box. And column 8 is the amount of said financial aid. All right, now moving on to CFR 6. CFR 6 is used to report the salaries given to a provider's board members, employees under title codes 601, 602, and 603, which are executive directors or CEOs, assistant executive directors, and CFOs, respectively. It's important to keep in mind that any employees operating under a contract with a separate entity that would normally fall under title codes 601, 602, and 603 must also be reported here on CFR 6. Also, any employees that earn more than $150,000 a year, whether through salary or contract. Lastly, the top 5 highest paid contractors that receive more than $50,000 per year also must be reported. CFR 6 is required for all submissions except for Article 28 abbreviated and mini abbreviated CFRs. If any employees serve on the governing authority, then select yes to the question in Section 1. Please note that this question does not include a non-voting member on the board, like a president, executive director, or CEO. If yes for this section is selected, it will prompt the user to input the employee name and their title code. You must hit Add a Line to complete. Section 2 is where all compensated board members will be listed individually. If an employee is also on the board, only report their compensation as a board member. Also important to note is that the compensation does not include stipends or dinner meetings. Amount paid here is self-explanatory along with the contracted payment amount. Any employee benefits like health insurance or retirement that is accessible by all employees must be reported in the fringe benefits column. Any other benefits that may be given out in place of money, like awards or loans, are reported as other benefits. To report on this line, you must add a line and fill in a description of the benefit and its cash value. Total compensation will total all other filled out columns automatically. You do not need to input this manually. All 601, 602, and 603 positions are reported in Section 3, including those that are considered contracted. All employees that have a yearly salary that exceeds $150,000 a year should also be reported here. That includes salary and contracted payments. You must click Add a Line to begin reporting. Concerning the annualized salary, it is important to note that the result of the amount paid for the performance and completion of regular services, managerial, administrative, professional, direct care, support, or other services divided by the FTE. If the FTE is greater than 1, the amount paid divided by 1 is calculated. A relatively new update to CFR 6 is here in this section is that columns 1 through 8 can now be imported using a text file. Here is an example showing CFR 6 column 9 if the other benefit is a non-allowable cost. In this screenshot, Mary Reynolds, the CEO, received money for car expenses that was not given to all employees, thus making it a non-allowable cost. This means that the expense will also have to be reported on CFR 3, line 41. Here's a screenshot of where the non-allowable cost of Mary's car expense needs to be listed on CFR 3, line 41. If this was missed, you have to go back and adjust. A description and a value must be assigned here. The top 5 highest paid contractors are reported in Section 4. These can be individuals or entities, and the compensation must be over $50,000 to be reported here. There are predefined items for any professional services, accounting, legal, medical, consulting, and other. If these descriptions do not fit the type of service, additional service types can be added to the detail line box. To add to this section, click Add a Line at the bottom, then list the name of the contractors and select the type of contractor in the dropdown and report the total amount paid during the reporting period. And that concludes CFR 6, and we are moving on to DMH1. All CFR types but the mini abbreviated must fill out the DMH1. Also exempt are providers for SED and DOH only programs. The data in the DMH1 is taken directly from the inputted data from CFR1. If you need to change any of the data on this schedule, it will need to be changed on a prior schedule. However, for those submitting abbreviated and Article 28 abbreviated CFRs, the data will not be calculated and will need to be manually inputted. Lines are reported by either program type or program site. The index code and program type together will designate whether a line is aggregated or not. Generally, if one column is required, enter 00 for every occurrence. If there are multiple columns allowed, enter 01 for the first occurrence, 02 for the second, and then so on. Requirements for filling out a DMH-1 include using the full accrual basis of accounting. If you are listing any equipment that is worth equal to or more than $5,000 and has a useful life of 2 years or more, it must be depreciated on this schedule. For full and abbreviated CFR types, agency administration will be separated by New York State agencies in their programs using the ratio value allocation methodology. Here is a screenshot of the DMH-1 in CFRS Web. The 3 tabs or sections of the DMH-1 are at the top of the page: program units of service and expenses, program revenues, and program adjustments to revenues. Again, for full CFRs, the data will be grayed out here since the data is transferred from CFR1. Only abbreviated and Article 28 abbreviated submission types directly enter data onto the DMH-1. Concerning the personal service line for full abbreviated and Article 28 abbreviated CFRs, this line will transfer over from CFR4. Any other revenue items over $1,000 each on lines 30, 34, and 40 must be detailed. In CFRS Web, there is a line detail box for you to enter this data. Line detail boxes are also provided for the following types of revenue: line 25 federal grants and line 26 state grants. Here's a screenshot of DMH-1, the revenue section, lines 15 through 31. And then the last section tab in DMH-1, which is gap adjustments to revenue, which is lines 32 through 36. And then the non-gap adjustments to revenue, lines 37 through 44. So this is the end of the schedule. So when you're ready, we highly recommend you use the yellow button at the bottom here, the DMH-1 to DMH-2 transfer button. Once you hit that button, the programs will transfer over to DMH-2 so you can begin the claiming schedule. And then if you need to edit anything in the DMH-2, you can. Don't worry, it's not going to be grayed out like it is here. And that concludes the DMH-1 section, and I am going to pass it on to the next speaker.
Hello, this is Alpa Amin again. Help function. When in doubt, use the help function. We believe this is useful tool. Within the menu function, at the bottom, you can find the help icon. A PDF file with the help contents will open in the separate browser tab. You can also click on the help icon next to the schedule name. A PDF file specific to the schedule will open in separate browser tab. Thank you once again for participating in the CFR training webinar for 2024-25 fiscal year consolidated fiscal report. In case you missed the beginning of the webinar, please take the time to fill out the post survey after you leave the event. It will help us make this training better. This webinar has been recorded and will be posted online shortly. An email will be sent out notifying you of the location. The Q&As will be carefully reviewed and answer will be posted online as soon as possible. This concludes CFR training session 1. Thank you.